The late afternoon sun cast warm slants of gold across the red brick facade of St. Mary's Orphanage, where laughter and the patter of small feet echoed through the walled garden. Denzel Washington stepped through the wrought iron gates with a gentle smile, his sleeves rolled up and his tie loosened, projecting an easy confidence. Cameras stationed discreetly around the grounds had buzzed all week about his visit, but Denzel seemed unbothered by the spectacle. He walked straight to the courtyard, where a dozen children chased a makeshift soccer ball over dusty patches of grass. Madame Alvarez, the orphanage's director, hurried up behind him. Her eyes glittered with gratitude and nerves. "Welcome, Mr. Washington," she said softly. "The children are in the garden, just beyond those hedges." Denzel nodded. "Thank you. I hope I'm not intruding," he replied, glancing at the excited youngsters. "I wanted to spend some time with them today." In the courtyard, the children had scraped lines into the dirt to mark goals. A small girl with braided hair and oversized shorts lunged for the ball, tripped, and scraped her knee. She drew back, tears welling in her eyes, but her patched, ill-fitting sneaker refused to stay tied. The ball rolled away, and she sank onto her heels, trying to blink back tears. Denzel's gaze settled on the girl. He raised a hand, signaling to his assistant to pause the camera's noise. 4 assistants froze mid-step, and a hush fell over the garden. Denzel calmly walked to the girl's side, knelt on one knee, and gently removed his own polished leather loafer. The girl looked up, startled, as he slipped off her worn sneaker. "May I?" he asked, voice low and kind. She nodded. Denzel unwrapped the laces, then took her foot and slipped his loafer onto it, buckling the strap carefully. The children fell silent. Only the distant crow of a crow and the soft rustle of the hedges broke the stillness. Once the loafer was secure, Denzel held out the sneaker and handed her his own shoelaces. "Here," he said, offering his lace-tied shoe. "Try it yourself." The girl's small hands trembled as she looped and tightened the laces. Her tears turned to a shy smile. Denzel rose and extended his hand. "All set, ready to play?" The girl stood, tested her balance, and grinned. She kicked the ball, which flew true toward her makeshift goal. The other children cheered and ran back into the game, reclaiming their laughter. A little boy named Luis, splattered with mud, waved enthusiastically at Denzel, who gave him a nod and a bright smile. Madame Alvarez approached, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Mr. Washington, this means so much to them." Denzel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "They're the real stars," he said softly. "I just brought a pair of shoes." As the sun dipped lower, Denzel spent the next hour walking among the children, learning their names, listening to their dreams, and offering quiet words of encouragement. He promised to return with proper sneakers for every child who needed them, igniting a wave of excitement that sent them running in circles, pointing at their shoes and planning imaginary matches. When he finally left through the iron gates, Madame Alvarez watched his silhouette fade into the golden haze. The orphanage garden was alive with energy, the children's smile brighter than the sunset. In that silent, simple moment, one man kneeling to help a child tie her shoe, everyone who witnessed it understood that true kindness needs no script, only a willing heart. The morning after his visit, word of Denzel Washington's gesture rippled through community and media alike. Local news outlets ran the headline, "Denzel's quiet act moves orphanage to tears," and social feeds overflowed with clips of the courtyard moment. Yet far beyond the cameras, at St. Mary's Orphanage, the real impact was just beginning to take root. Denzel arrived at 9 a.m., stepping from his car into a crisp breeze that carried the scent of dew-damp grass. Madame Alvarez greeted him at the gate, holding an envelope labeled simply, "Thank you, Mr. Washington." Inside were hand-drawn pictures from each child, a soccer ball, a bright pair of shoes, and smiling faces, taped onto a poster board. Her eyes glistened. "They asked me to give you this." He accepted the gift with gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly, studying each drawing. "These are treasures." They walked together toward the courtyard, where the children were gathered at long wooden benches beneath a newly installed awning. Tables were laid with shoeboxes, each wrapped in colorful paper. Denzel's brow furrowed in surprise. "What's all this?" A chattering group of older children stepped forward to explain. One boy, Dominic, cleared his throat. "After you left, we talked," he said, voice earnest. "We wanted to help too, so we saved our allowance and chores money to buy shoes for everyone." He gestured to the boxes. "These are for every kid who needs them." Denzel's throat tightened. He knelt before the boxes, lifting the lid of one to reveal a brand new pair of sturdy sneakers. Each was tagged with a child's name in glitter pen. "You did this?" he asked, looking up at the young faces. Young Maya, the little girl whose torn sneaker had started it all, stepped forward. "We wanted you to know what you did mattered," she said, "and we wanted to do something that matters too." Her eyes brimmed with pride and tears. Denzel rose and embraced Maya gently. "This is the greatest gift," he told all of them. "You've shown me how big hearts can change the world." The children clustered around him, hands brushing his arms, eager to share their achievement. Madame Alvarez motioned to two aides, who began handing Denzel a second envelope. Inside was a list of local shoemakers and sports equipment suppliers, each offering to donate at cost or discounted shoes for the entire orphanage. "This community has rallied," she explained. "You opened the door, and they answered." The courtyard buzzed as volunteers from nearby neighborhoods streamed in with bags of socks, shoelaces, and hand-knitted scarves. A local pharmacist arrived to apply antiseptic to scraped knees, while a parent volunteer set up a banner, "Denzel's Shoe Day." The scene unfolded like a carefully choreographed surprise, but spontaneous, fueled by gratitude. Denzel moved through the crowd, helping children slip into new shoes. Dark blue sneakers for Luis, bright pink kicks for Vanessa, and special athletic trainers for Dominic, who beamed wider than anyone. With each pairing, the children tested their balance, took tentative steps, then bounded off in wild circles, their laughter ringing off the brick walls. When every child was shod, Denzel gathered them in a wide circle. "Today," he said, "you reminded me that kindness is contagious. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before, and we lift up those who follow." He looked at Madame Alvarez. "Let's make sure every child here has shoes for every season, rain boots for winter, sandals for summer." Madame Alvarez nodded, voice strong. "We will," she vowed. As afternoon light waned, Denzel quietly slipped away, yet not before leaving behind a promise. He would return monthly to host a shoe and story afternoon where children could share their hopes and receive whatever they needed, whether books, clothing, or simply his listening ear. Walking through the ornate gates at sunset, Denzel felt the quiet power of that courtyard swell in his chest. Cameras might capture the moment, but it was the children's own act of generosity, their decision to buy shoes for their friends, that transformed a single gesture into a living legacy of compassion. And for everyone who watched in awe, this was only the beginning of what it meant to stand up for others. 2 weeks later, St. Mary's Orphanage buzzed with anticipation as word spread. Today would be the first shoe and story afternoon hosted by Denzel Washington himself. Long wooden tables were arranged under the courtyard's new awning, now painted sky blue and adorned with colorful lanterns the children had crafted. Each table held stacks of books, notebooks, and an array of shoeboxes labeled with names and sizes, more than enough for every child at the orphanage. At precisely 2:00 p.m., Denzel arrived in a quiet sedan, stepping from the car with that familiar, easy smile. Madame Alvarez greeted him at the gate, extending her arm in welcome. "They've been counting down the days," she said with a laugh. "I've never seen them so eager for a library session." Inside the courtyard, 30 children, from energetic toddlers to thoughtful preteens, gathered on benches, their new shoes gleaming in the afternoon light. Maya, now one of the orphanage's junior helpers, handed Denzel a small notebook. On the cover, in careful handwriting, were the words, "My Story," framed by hand-drawn hearts. Denzel nodded gratefully. "Thank you," he said softly. "May I see some of these?" He sank to the ground among them, and the first reader, Luis, began. In a quiet voice, he read about his earliest memory, running barefoot through fields with his siblings, and how a single pair of sneakers had changed everything. As Luis spoke, Denzel's gaze remained warm and focused, conveying a silent respect that made the boy's chest swell with pride. Next came Olivia, clutching her own notebook. Her story was about learning to read, discovering that each letter held magic, and how her new shoes let her dash to the library just 5 blocks away, where she devoured one story after another. A ripple of applause followed her reading, and Olivia blushed, her new white sneakers peeking out beneath her skirt. After 3 more readings, Denzel stood and addressed the group. "Every story here is a testament to resilience and hope," he said. "Today, we celebrate not only your words, but also the journeys they represent. These shoes are more than footwear. They're passports to your dreams." He paused, letting that sink in. He turned to one of the long tables where dozens of additional notebooks and shoes remained. "I've arranged for a mobile library to come by every month," he announced. "They'll bring books you request, and new shoes will be available each season. But I want you to take one promise home today. Wherever you go, share your story. Encourage someone else to follow their dream." Madame Alvarez stepped forward with a stack of certificates, official recognition of each child's story ambassador status. As Denzel pinned a certificate on each child's shirt, he whispered, "Your words matter." Maya felt a proud flutter in her chest when Denzel fastened her badge. She touched it lightly, eyes shining. Outside the courtyard gates, volunteers from a local bookstore had set up a free book exchange station. As children and staff emerged after the reading session, they found carts laden with picture books, chapter novels, and even dictionaries. A sign read, "Take one, leave one, let stories travel." The children immediately began browsing, trading titles, and sharing recommendations. Meanwhile, parents from the surrounding neighborhood, now active supporters of the orphanage, arrived with trays of homemade snacks to share: fruit cups, muffins, and lemonade. The simple act of community dining brought a festive energy, with Denzel joining small groups, laughing at Maya's witty observations, and listening to Luis describe his next writing project. As the sun dipped low, Denzel gathered everyone for a final moment. All 30 children held up their new books in one hand and shoes in the other. Denzel raised his own book, a classic fairy tale. "Every adventure begins with a single step," he said, "and every tale begins with a single word. Keep walking, keep reading, and keep believing in yourselves." The courtyard erupted into cheers, and Madame Alvarez captured the moment on her phone. Children ringing in joy, Denzel's broad smile, and the painted awning above them. That photograph would later headline local news: "Denzel Washington's Library, Shoes, and Stories Ignite Orphanage Renewal." Later, as Denzel drove away in the fading dusk, he reflected on the power of small acts carried over time. Shoes that sparked confidence, stories that fueled imagination, and monthly visits that promised ongoing support. The orphanage no longer felt like an isolated institution. It had become a vibrant hub of learning, expression, and community. And all it took was a single boy's tear-streaked moment and a famous actor's choice to kneel and tie a shoelace. A month later, St. Mary's Orphanage hummed with excitement as Daniel Denzel Washington returned, this time to launch the Dream Steps mentorship program he'd quietly been organizing. The courtyard was transformed. Vibrant banners declaring "Dream Steps begins today" fluttered above tables set with name tags, notebooks, and neatly arranged chairs. Madame Alvarez greeted him at the gate, her eyes shining. "We've been planning ever since the last library visit," she said. "Today, community mentors from every field are here to meet the children." Denzel stepped inside, pausing as he took in the scene. Dozens of local professionals, teachers, engineers, artists, nurses, chefs, even a firefighter, stood at stations beneath the awning, each holding a card describing their expertise. Across from them, the 30 children from the orphanage clustered in a semicircle, their new shoes gleaming and their story ambassador badges pinned proudly on their shirts. He addressed the group in a warm, steady voice. "Welcome back, everyone. Last time we shared shoes and stories. Today, we share steps toward your dreams." He swept his gaze over the children. "You've shown that courage and kindness can move mountains. Now it's time for our volunteers to share what they know and for you to take those first steps." A hush settled before the children surged forward, selecting mentors based on their interests. 11-year-old Luis gravitated toward Ms. Patel, the robotics engineer. 12-year-old Maya hesitated, then chose Chef Monique, eager to learn culinary arts. Others gathered around the firefighter, the nurse, and the local librarian, who promised help with essay writing and scholarships. Denzel guided a small group of preteens to a table where Mr. Rodriguez, a graphic designer, displayed his sketchbook. "I want to learn to illustrate," said Anna, holding her notebook. Mr. Rodriguez offered her a pencil. "Draw me a pair of shoes," he challenged, "and we'll turn it into your first logo." Anna's eyes brightened as she sketched a sneaker with wings, symbolizing hope. Denzel watched, nodding in approval. At the edge of the courtyard, Chef Monique gathered 6 children around a portable stove. "Today you'll chop, stir, and season," she announced. Maya's hands trembled around the knife, but Monique guided her, demonstrating each slice. When the finished soup simmered, its warm aroma drifted through the garden. Maya ladled generous bowls for everyone, pride glowing on her face. Meanwhile, the firefighter, Captain Lewis, invited 3 boys to test a hose and learn basic safety drills. As they sprayed water into an empty tub, he shared stories of teamwork and bravery, emphasizing that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. After 45 minutes, Madame Alvarez rang a small bell. Children and mentors reconvened under the awning for a debrief. Each mentor spoke briefly about the skills they shared: drawing, cooking, coding, caring, or courage. Then Denzel stepped forward once more. "These first steps are just the beginning," he said. "Dream Steps mentorship will meet every Saturday. Keep practicing. Keep asking questions. And remember that every one of you deserves someone in your corner." He turned to Madame Alvarez, who held a stack of bright certificates. With careful hands, Denzel presented each child with a Dream Steps member certificate embossed with the Orphanage logo and a small sneaker emblem. As he pinned Anna's certificate, she whispered, "Thank you for believing in me." He smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I already do." Volunteers and children lingered, exchanging phone numbers and planning the next session. A field trip to the fire station, a behind-the-scenes bakery tour, and a visit to an animation studio. The courtyard buzzed with connection, mentors and mentees bridging worlds through shared curiosity and kindness. As dusk settled over St. Mary's, Denzel tucked his notebook under his arm and knelt to tie a child's shoelace one last time. "One more step?" he asked. The child sprang to her feet, ready to run toward the future. And in that golden light, the orphanage felt more alive than ever, a place where kindness sparked dreams, and each new step carried them forward. Dawn's light filtered through the tall windows of St. Mary's Orphanage Library as Denzel Washington arrived to host the inaugural Story Showcase and Shoe Drive. The courtyard below was already abuzz with activity, a semicircle of easels displaying children's artwork and writings, donation tables piled high with shoeboxes, and volunteers carrying trays of juice and muffins. Madame Alvarez met Denzel at the door, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "They've been waiting since sunrise," she said. "Today, every child will both give and receive." Stepping into the courtyard, Denzel paused, taking in the sight. 30 children lined up beside tables marked Give and Receive. On the Give side, they placed shoeboxes, some filled with brand new sneakers, others with gently used pairs, donated by community members who had heard of the program. On the Receive side, tables held shoeboxes labeled with each child's name and size. Behind the tables, local shoemakers stood ready to fit and adjust each pair. A hush fell as Denzel addressed the children. "Today, you're authors, artists, and ambassadors for kindness," he began. "You'll share your stories on those easels, and in return, you'll receive shoes chosen for you by your friends and neighbors." He swept his gaze over their eager faces. "Once you share your stories, choose a pair that inspires you. And remember, every gift comes with care and respect." With that, the children dispersed. At Station 1, Maya, her braided hair tied with a bright ribbon, began reading her poem. "With every step I take, I learn from each mistake. My shoes carry more than feet. They bear my hopes, my heartbeat." Listeners murmured appreciation as Maya carefully folded her paper, then stepped to the receive table where volunteer shoemaker Tony handed her a light blue pair with cushioned soles. Maya slid them on and bounced lightly, her smile broad. Nearby, Dominic pointed to a painting he'd created, a pair of oversized sneakers blossoming into flowers. He explained how the flowers represented his dreams, becoming an engineer and building bridges that connect people. A local hardware store owner, impressed by his ambition, knelt to fit Dominic with sturdy high-top sneakers designed for construction site safety. Across the courtyard, Luis and Olivia traded shy glances. Luis had penned a short story about a boy who traveled the world on magical shoes. Olivia had painted colorful footprints leading toward a glowing horizon. After sharing, they each received pairs painted by a local muralist. Luis's shoes sported compass designs, while Olivia's bore sunrise hues. As the morning sun climbed, more children shared tales and collected shoes. At the center stand, Chef Monique offered freshly baked cookies and lemonade, thanking each child for their creativity. The sweet treats fueled their excitement, and volunteers snapped photographs to document each fitting. Midway through, Denzel took a moment on the library steps, watching the scene unfold. Madame Alvarez joined him. "Look at them," she said softly. "They're confident, proud, connected." Denzel nodded. "This isn't just about shoes. It's about expression, community, and self-worth." He stepped forward and tapped a small bell. The children gathered around. "Now," he said, "let's dedicate these shoes and stories to our future. May every step you take be guided by your dreams, and may you always remember the kindness that brought them to your feet." With that, the courtyard erupted into cheers. Children paraded their new shoes, high-fiving mentors and volunteers. Cameras captured the jubilant moment, tiny feet shuffling down the center aisle surrounded by applause. As the event wound down, community donors approached Denzel with hugs and thanks. A local pastor handed him a donation pledge, funds to support next season's shoe drive and story showcase. Denzel accepted graciously. "Together, we've shown that every child's story matters, and that kindness can be worn every day." Later, as he walked through the orchard-lined path back to his car, Denzel reflected on how each shoelace knot tied more than fabric. It bound hearts, built confidence, and charted a path toward brighter tomorrows. And as the sun set over St. Mary's, the echoes of laughter and the flutter of story pages affirmed that kindness, like a well-tied shoelace, holds everything together. 2 weeks later, a gentle spring rain pattered against the wide windows of St. Mary's Orphanage as Denzel Washington returned to launch the Steps and Stories Scholarship Fund. In the courtyard, long folding tables groaned under the weight of scholarship applications, handwritten essays, drawings of future careers, and charts detailing each child's academic goals. Madame Alvarez greeted Denzel with a warm umbrella and a stack of envelopes stamped "Dreams in Motion." "Every applicant has prepared a story," she said, brimming with pride. "Today we'll honor some of those dreams with scholarships, paid for by our community partners." Denzel nodded thoughtfully. "Education is the surest path forward," he replied. "Let's celebrate ambition." Under the newly installed awning, children clustered in small groups, clutching portfolios. Volunteers, teachers, local college students, and business leaders stood ready to interview candidates. A whiteboard announced the schedule: 10-minute sessions with each prospective scholar, during which they would present their Steps and Stories proposals and explain how a scholarship would make a difference. The first student, 13-year-old Luis, took a deep breath as he faced his interviewer, Principal Rivera from the neighborhood middle school. He unfurled a poster showing his robot design, wheels crafted from repurposed gears, and explained his goal to study engineering. He spoke of building affordable prosthetics for children. Principal Rivera's eyes widened. "Your vision inspires me," she said, handing him a green approved sticker. Luis beamed, stepping aside to make room for the next candidate. Next came Maya, clutching her scholarship packet. She described how she'd begun writing poems in her old shoes, dreaming of someday publishing a collection. She read a verse about hope taking flight on well-tied laces. "With every stump a new page turns. My story unfolds as the world learns that even the smallest voice can sing when given room to soar on wing." At her reading's end, local author Ms. Harrison applauded. "You've got literary wings," she declared, pinning the sticker to Maya's folder. Behind them, Dominic presented his graphic design portfolio, sketching logo ideas on the fly. An advertising executive nodded approvingly, recognizing raw talent and awarding him a scholarship to attend weekend design workshops. As rain fell in rhythmic sheets, the courtyard buzzed with anticipation. Chef Monique offered warm soup to the candidates, encouraging them with gentle smiles. A hush fell when 10-year-old Olivia approached her Chen, the pediatrician, and declared her plan to become a doctor herself so no child would ever feel afraid in a hospital. Dar Chen's eyes filled with tears as she stamped the approved sticker on Olivia's application. Midway through the day, Denzel gathered the children under the awning and addressed them. "Today isn't about competition," he said, voice steady over the rain's patter. "It's about believing in yourselves and knowing that a community stands behind you." He gestured to the volunteers. "These mentors are offering more than funds. They're offering guidance. Lean on them as you take your next steps." As the interviews concluded, volunteers escorted the scholarship recipients to a display table where certificates and checks awaited. 20 children received financial awards for books, school supplies, and tuition support. When each child accepted their certificate, the volunteers offered a word of encouragement and a promise to stay involved in their education. Madam Alvarez approached Denzel, handing him a final envelope marked "Community Commitment," pledges from local businesses to sponsor future scholarship rounds, plus offers of internship opportunities for older mentees. "This community has embraced your vision," she said. "They believe in these children as much as you do." Denzel smiled, his gaze sweeping over the rain-washed courtyard. "They are proof that when we stand up for dreams, we lift everyone around us." As the day ended, the rain eased, and the children lined up to run a celebratory lap around the garden in their new shoes and hopeful hearts. Denzel watched them go, feet splashing in puddles, laughter carrying on the breeze, knowing that each step carried a story, and each story held the promise of a brighter future. A bright Saturday morning found Denzel Washington back at St. Mary's Orphanage, where the Steps and Stories Scholarship Fund had just awarded 20 young scholars. Today marked the launch of the next phase, mentor meetups and community connections. Madam Alvarez stood beneath the awning, coordinating a flurry of activity, school buses idling, professional volunteers chatting with eager children, and local organizations setting up resource booths. Denzel arrived in a modest sedan, stepping onto the courtyard's brick pathway as the sun broke through lingering clouds. He was greeted by Mrs. Rodriguez, the scholarship program coordinator. "Good morning, Mr. Washington," she smiled. "We've arranged 4 group trips today, visits to the community college, the city library, the tech incubator, and the Culinary Institute. Each scholar will pair with their volunteer mentor." Denzel nodded. "Let's connect them with experiences that light their path forward." Under the awning, 30 children gathered in small clusters, scholars clutching backpacks, mentors holding itinerary folders. Denzel addressed them. "Today, you step beyond these gates into our city's resources. Listen, learn, and ask every question. Your mentors are your guides. Let them open doors you never knew existed." Applause rose as the buses pulled away in 4 colorful lines: gold for academics, blue for technology, green for literature, and red for culinary arts. Denzel climbed aboard the gold bus bound for the community college, flanked by his mentee, 11-year-old Luis, and his mentor, Principal Rivera. Inside, the college's campus buzzed with students darting between classes. Principal Rivera led them through the modern library's glass doors to a study carrel lined with computers. Luis's eyes widened at rows of reference books and digital catalogs. "You can research anything here," the principal explained, showing Luis how to search for engineering journals. Luis's fingers flew across the keyboard, a smile spreading as he downloaded blueprints for a simple robot. Meanwhile, at the tech incubator, Denzel's rotation brought him to the Blue Bus group. Mentor and software developer Aisha introduced Maya and Dominic to startup teams working on virtual reality education tools. Maya donned a headset and gasped as she entered a simulated classroom, her very poem, Hope in Motion, displayed on the virtual blackboard. She turned to Aisha, eyes shining. "I want to code stories next," she said. Back at the city library, Olivia and her mentor, librarian Chen, navigated rows of biographies and poetry anthologies. Olivia discovered a youth writers' workshop and signed up on the spot. Chen showed her a quiet reading alcove where local authors held readings. Olivia scribbled notes for her own future event. At the Culinary Institute, the Red Bus group donned chef's whites under Chef Monique's guidance. They learned knife skills and plating techniques, then tasted gourmet versions of familiar dishes, beans and rice elevated to fine dining fare. Maya joined the tasting, her scholarship certificate tucked into her apron pocket. "One day I'll serve meals like these," she declared, carefully drizzling sauce. As the day unfolded, Denzel circulated among the bus's return point in the orphanage courtyard. Each group arrived glowing with stories. Luis held printed engineering schematics. Maya demonstrated a rudimentary code app on a tablet. Olivia carried a stack of reserved books and a workshop schedule. And Maya, a shared spokesperson, presented a mini cookbook prototype. Denzel gathered the scholars under the awning once more. "Today, you discovered places where dreams grow," he said. "You touched the tools of your futures: robots, recipes, stories, and code. But the greatest resource is the people you met. Keep those connections alive." Madame Alvarez stepped forward, handing each scholar a connection badge, listing their mentor's contact information and the visit highlights. The children pinned the badges to their shirts, their faces alight with possibility. As the buses departed, Denzel lingered in the courtyard, watching the sun glint off the worn bricks and the new shoes powering future steps. He reflected on how a simple shoe and story had blossomed into scholarships, mentorships, and now real-world explorations. Each experience built a bridge from childhood to adulthood, and St. Mary's gates had opened wide to a world ready to guide these young dreamers. 3 weeks after the mentor meetups, St. Mary's Orphanage buzzed with anticipation as Denzel Washington returned to inaugurate the next phase: community partnership projects. Madame Alvarez met him in the courtyard, where long banners fluttered overhead, room for each child's name and project title. Tables lined the perimeter, each staffed by representatives from local nonprofits, businesses, and civic groups eager to collaborate. Denzel surveyed the scene. 4 project stations: urban garden, book buddy program, tech tutoring, and culinary outreach, each promising hands-on work and lasting impact. He raised his voice gently to address the children and their mentors. "Today, you'll launch real community projects using the skills and passions you discovered on your field trips. These partnerships will extend your reach far beyond these walls." At the urban garden station, Master Gardener Rosa Delgado stood beside raised beds filled with rich soil. 19-year-old Luis, now nearly ready for high school, gripped a small spade. His mentor, Principal Rivera, guided him. "Your goal," Rivera explained, "is to plant vegetables that will feed local shelters." Luis nodded, recalling his dream of building affordable prosthetics. Today, his work would nourish bodies. As he dug, Rosa taught him about composting and seasonal planting. Nearby, the Book Buddy program took shape under Librarian Chen's guidance. Olivia and 2 classmates organized piles of donated books, preparing them for weekly reading visits at a nearby senior center. Seniors had already signed up, eager for young voices to animate classic tales. Olivia's mentor beamed. "This bridges generations," she said. Olivia's heart swelled imagining the stories she'd share. At the tech tutoring booth, software developer Aisha set up laptops on folding tables. Maya and Dominic arranged chairs for neighborhood youth with smartphone hand-me-downs. Their plan: teach basic coding and digital safety, skills that would empower their peers. Dominic opened a simple coding tutorial explaining loops and variables. Each boy and girl leaned forward, eyes bright with possibility. The final station, culinary outreach, featured mobile stoves and donated ingredients. Chef Monique demonstrated how to prepare healthy snacks for an after-school program at a community center 2 blocks away. Maya, switching between roles, helped chop vegetables, while another child named Jamal stirred large pots of vegetable stew. They deliver meals and cooking lessons, teaching families to prepare nutritious dishes on a budget. As the morning unfolded, Denzel circulated among stations, offering encouragement and learning alongside the children. When he reached Olivia's book buddy team, he listened as she practiced reading aloud to an empty chair, imagining her senior audience. "Confidence in your voice will light up those rooms," he told her. Midday, Madame Alvarez rang a small bell, calling everyone back under the awning. "Your project's launched now," she announced. "Community partners will support logistics, and you're in charge of planning and execution." Volunteers from the YMCA, local farms, and the public library stepped forward to formalize schedules and resources. Denzel addressed the group one final time. "You've taken shoes and stories, mentorship, and resources. Now you convert them into community change. These gardens will flourish. These reading circles will comfort. These tech sessions will empower. And these meals will fuel dreams. He paused, letting his gaze rest on each eager face. This is your moment. Lead the way. As cheers rose, the children dispersed to their stations, teammates and mentors collaborating in earnest. Denzel and Madame Alvarez stood back, sharing a quiet smile of profound pride. The courtyard, once a field of soccer lines and shopping-grade sneakers, had evolved into a vibrant hub of purpose and partnership. When the sun dipped low, Denzel knelt to tie a young volunteer's borrowed shoe, a symbolic gesture reminding him how it all began. He rose, offering the youth a thumbs up. "Keep stepping forward," he said. Walking away through the orphanage gates, Denzel Washington carried with him the sound of shovels in soil, pages turning, keyboards clicking, and stovetops steaming, each note a testament to a community transformed by kindness in motion. 2 weeks after the community partnership projects began, St. Mary's Orphanage bustled with fresh energy in its first real test. Denzel Washington arrived on a crisp Saturday morning, Madame Alvarez by his side, to oversee the halfway check-in for the urban garden, book buddy, tech tutoring, and culinary outreach initiatives. The courtyard's banners now displayed progress charts, but darker notes marred some: a row of uprooted seedlings in the garden, a library cancellation notice due to low senior turnout, and a broken tablet reported missing from the tech station. Denzel's calm smile gave way to concern as he scanned the scene. He gathered the children and mentors under the awning. "I've heard there have been challenges," he began, voice measured. "That's part of any journey. Today, we troubleshoot and recommit." First, they approached the urban garden. Luis stood beside Rosa Delgado, arms crossed over a rain-damp trowel. "Someone pulled out the lettuce," he said, pointing to empty rows. "We don't know why." Rosa knelt, inspecting footprints in the mud. "Could be strays or kids from the street," she suggested. Denzel nodded. "Let's turn this into an opportunity. We'll rebuild with a protective fence and plant fast-growing cover crops to deter vandals." He tapped his phone and called a local hardware store, securing donated fencing materials for that afternoon. "Resilience means rebuilding stronger," he told Luis, who straightened at the words. Next, they came to the Book Buddy program. Olivia greeted them, holding the cancellation notice. "Our senior partners said too few students came, so they paused visits." Librarian Chen stood beside her. "Maybe our timing conflicts with their appointments." Denzel folded the notice. "Let's adjust. We'll recruit students from the Steps in Story Scholarship to guarantee 4 readers per session, and we'll switch to weekdays when seniors are more active here." He rolled up his sleeves, pulling volunteers aside to confirm the new schedule. Olivia's face brightened at the proactive pivot. At the tech tutoring table, Maya and Dominic reviewed attendance logs. Tutors signed in, but only 2 neighborhood children arrived. Dominic exhaled shakily. "We advertised on the orphanage board, but maybe we need broader outreach." Aisha stepped forward. "I know the youth center down the block. Let's partner with them. They'll bring kids if we host sessions there too." Denzel's eyes lit up. "Brilliant. Let's schedule 2 satellite sessions next week." The trio high-fived, energized by the solution. Finally, Chef Monique's culinary outreach team reported no setbacks. Parent volunteers and after-school attendees had doubled, and surplus stew was going to a shelter. Denzel smiled and patted Monique's shoulder. "This is a model of success. Let's celebrate it later." Under the awning once more, Denzel addressed the gathered children and mentors. "What we learned today is vital. Challenges aren't failures. They're invitations to adapt. Each project here is a living experiment. When something breaks, we fix it better." He swept his gaze over determined faces. "Remember, every community partnership will face rough patches. Your real strength is in finding creative solutions and never losing faith." Madame Alvarez presented certificates labeled Resilience Champions to Luis, Olivia, Maya, Dominic, and Chef Monique's team. As Denzel pinned each badge, he whispered, "Thank you for rising to the challenge." To conclude, he unveiled a surprise: 20 new saplings and garden tools donated by a nearby nursery, plus a printed schedule of upcoming satellite tech tutoring dates at the youth center and updated book buddy calendars. Children crowded around the donation tables, distributing tools and schedules among themselves with renewed pride. As evening light settled, the orphanage courtyard glowed with possibility. The once uprooted garden would blossom behind its new fence. Seniors would gather again for storytelling. Neighborhood children would learn coding where they felt comfortable, and the culinary program would continue feeding both bodies and souls. Walking through the iron gates, Denzel reflected on the day's lessons. Adversity sharpened resolve. Community partnerships thrived on flexibility, and the spirit of kindness endured when met with resilience. And as the children raced past him, toting shovels, books, tablets, and ladles, he knew the true test of compassion lay not in perfect beginnings, but in courageous comebacks. A month after the Resilience Challenge, St. Mary's Orphanage courtyard brimmed with new life. Fresh lettuce peeked through protective fencing in the urban garden, and sign-up sheets for book buddy, tech tutoring, and culinary outreach overflowed. Denzel Washington arrived that morning to launch the community showcase and celebration, where each project would present its accomplishments to sponsors, volunteers, and neighbors. Under the bright spring sun, long folding tables were arranged in a semicircle under the blue awning, each station adorned with banners: Urban Harvest, Pages and Partners, Code Collaborators, and Kitchen Creations. Madame Alvarez welcomed Denzel at the gate, bouquet in hand. "We've invited everyone, city council members, local business owners, and media. Today, the community sees your impact." Denzel nodded, adjusting his sleeves. "Today, we honor every step taken, the mistakes, the fixes, and the breakthroughs." At precisely 10 a.m., the courtyard gates swung open. Dozens of spectators, donors, neighbors, and civic leaders filtered in, receiving program booklets and small seed packets to plant at home. The first presentation began at the Urban Harvest table, where Luis and Rosa Delgado showcased a wheelbarrow overflowing with fresh produce: lettuce, tomatoes, and peppers grown in the protected beds. Luis stepped forward, voice steady. "After the vandalism, we rebuilt stronger. We've donated over 50 pounds of vegetables to the local food pantry and taught neighbors how to compost. This garden feeds bodies and brings our community together." Neighbors nodded appreciatively, reaching for tomato samples and exchanging smiles. Next, the Pages and Partners station featured Olivia and librarian Chen. A display of photos showed book exchanges between orphans and seniors, and a chart highlighted a 200% increase in senior visits since the revised schedule. Olivia read a testimonial from Mrs. Thompson, a senior who said, "These children's stories have brought me joy and renewed my sense of purpose." Applause rippled through the crowd as guests poured lemonade and selected pamphlets on how to join future reading sessions. At Code Collaborators, Maya and Dominic stood before a laptop running a simple educational game they developed. A projected screen demonstrated interactive puzzles that taught basic programming concepts. Aisha explained, "We partnered with the Youth Center to host weekly tutorials. Over 80 students have participated, and 2 will present at the regional STEM fair." Guests tapped at the game on demo tablets, impressed by the children's ingenuity. Finally, Kitchen Creations showcased Chef Monique and the culinary outreach team, preparing mini gumbo samples for the assembled crowd. A large display board detailed their after-school cooking classes and meal deliveries to neighboring families. Chef Monique announced, "We've served over 200 meals and trained 10 parent volunteers to continue the program year-round." Attendees savored the flavors and stamped their seed packets with kitchen roots, the culinary circle's emblem. Between presentations, Denzel circulated, chatting with sponsors and dignitaries. He paused at a table where a city council member signed a proclamation declaring St. Mary's Community Project Day, an annual event, a testament to the orphanage's transformation. As the final presentation concluded, Madame Alvarez rang a small bell, calling everyone back under the awning. Denzel stepped to the front, a hush falling. "Today demonstrates what kindness in motion can achieve," he began, voice resonant. "We faced setbacks, destroyed crops, low turnout, missing equipment, yet each time these children and mentors found solutions, rebuilt, and grew stronger." He gestured to the children. They are proof that when we invest in dreams and provide support, we create lasting change. These projects have fed bodies, nurtured minds, and strengthened our community bonds. Turning to the assembled audience, Denzel continued, "But our work doesn't end here. We must sustain these efforts, expand the garden, grow our reading circle, scale the coding workshops, and keep cooking meals for families in need." He glanced at Madame Alvarez. "Together we'll ensure St. Mary's remains a beacon of hope." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers as children led guests in a celebratory lap around the courtyard, tiny feet in polished shoes splashing through puddles left by a gentle morning shower. Cameras clicked, capturing radiant faces and the vibrant banners overhead. As Denzel walked away through the gates, Madame Alvarez by his side, he reflected on the journey from a single-tied shoelace to a full-scale community movement. Each chapter, shoes, stories, scholarships, mentorships, partnerships, and now celebration, had woven a tapestry of compassion and resilience. And as the children's laughter echoed behind him, Denzel Washington knew this integrated community canvas would continue to evolve, each new season offering fresh opportunities to plant seeds of hope and watch them grow in the hearts of all who dared to care. Spring slipped into early summer, and the vibrant momentum at St. Mary's Orphanage showed no signs of slowing. Denzel Washington arrived one sun-drenched morning to unveil the next critical chapter, the Alumni Ambassadors and Outreach Network. Madame Alvarez stood beneath the awning, clipboard in hand, as dozens of former residents, now teenagers and young adults, returned for their first official roles as ambassadors. Denzel's eyes brightened at the scene, alumni mingling with current children, wearing bright polo shirts stamped with the Orphanage logo and the words Ambassador Team. Behind them, a new banner proclaimed, "From Shoelaces to Leadership." A nod to the first moment that ignited the entire program. He stepped into the courtyard and addressed the gathering. "Welcome home, Ambassador Team," he began, voice warm. "You once received shoes and scholarships here. Today you give back your time, your talents, and your stories to inspire those who follow." He paused to let the applause settle, then turned to Madame Alvarez. "Tell me about the plan." Madame Alvarez smiled and gestured to 4 new stations set up beneath the awning: neighborhood tutoring, community garden ambassadors, library liaison, and tech help desk. Each would be led by alumni, supported by current mentors and volunteers. At the neighborhood tutoring station, former student-turned-college sophomore Jasmine organized a roster of tutoring sessions in math and English for local children. She coordinated with Principal Rivera, ensuring sessions aligned with school curricula. Today, she would lead her first session. Denzel watched as a group of younger children traced algebra problems, guided by Jasmine's calm encouragement. Nearby, community garden ambassadors, led by former scholar Luis, oversaw transplanting seedlings into a brand new raised bed specially built to teach horticulture skills. Luis knelt in the soil, instructing a circle of children on proper spacing and watering techniques. When a young girl fretted over bending stems, Luis gently showed her how to cradle the plant. Denzel nodded approvingly. At the library liaison table, Maya guided visitors through a catalog of requested books, assisting current children with checkout cards and reading schedules. She and librarian Chen had developed an alumni-led story circle. Each week, one ambassador would read their favorite childhood book to new readers. Maya greeted a shy first grader by name and led her to a cozy reading nook, her confidence radiating. Finally, the tech help desk station buzzed with energy as Dominic and Aisha demonstrated basic coding puzzles and digital safety tips to volunteers and peers. They unveiled a new tablet charging station, donated by a local tech firm, where children could come after school for supervised screen time and tech mentoring. Dominic beamed when a middle schooler completed their first if-then-then loop, awarding them a digital logic leader badge. After exploring each station, Denzel gathered everyone under the awning for a brief reflection. "Alumni ambassadors embody the power of giving back," he said. "You're not just repeating what you received, you're amplifying it. Today, you become the living proof that support transforms lives and creates cycles of opportunity." A round of applause rippled through the courtyard as current children high-fived their older peers. Madame Alvarez stepped forward and presented the ambassadors with commemorative leadership laces, bright laces to lace into their ambassador shoes as a symbol of their new roles. Each ambassador bent to tie their lace, eyes shining with pride. As the afternoon sun sank toward the horizon, Denzel stepped aside to let the ambassador team take over. He watched Jasmine lead her tutoring group, followed by Luis instructing gardeners, Maya cuddling readers, and Dominic troubleshooting tablet issues. The courtyard echoed with laughter, reading aloud, and the satisfying thud of spades meeting soil. When Denzel finally walked away, he paused at the gates and glanced back. The once quiet orphanage court had blossomed into a living classroom, where shoes, stories, scholarships, and mentorship had converged into a self-sustaining ecosystem of compassion. And at its heart stood alumni, proof that a single act of kindness, tethered to sustained community, could launch generations on pathways to hope. Early autumn dawned crisp and invigorating over St. Mary's Orphanage, and Denzel Washington returned to unveil the next evolution of the program, the Digital Kindness Journal and Global Pen Pals Initiative. Madame Alvarez awaited him at the courtyard's entrance, brandishing a sleek laptop and a stack of glossy postcards printed with children's artwork and email addresses. Today, she said, we connect our ambassadors and current scholars with peers around the world. Under the familiar blue awning, long folding tables had been reconfigured with laptops, tablets, and a projected world map pinned with glowing dots, each dot representing a new pen pal partnership in Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America. Young and old participants gathered in small groups, alumni ambassadors mentoring current children as they typed out introductory emails and decorated postcards with their unique story ambassador insignia. Denzel stepped forward, voice warm yet impassioned. Our courtyard has hosted shoes, stories, scholarships, and mentorship, he began. Now it's time to extend your voices beyond these gates. Through the Digital Kindness Journal, you'll share your experiences, your challenges, and your triumphs with children on the other side of the globe. In turn, you'll learn their stories and cultures, building empathy without borders. He gestured to Luis and Maya, who led the first workshop. Luis guided a circle of 8-year-olds through drafting their initial email, a short paragraph introducing themselves, describing their favorite book, and asking about their global peers' daily lives. Maya demonstrated how to attach photographs of the garden's harvest, the culinary team's soup pots, and the renovated tech center. Children watched eagerly, hands flying over keyboards as they learned simple HTML tags to embed images in line. At the postcard art station, Dominic oversaw postcard design. He showed current scholars how to fold paper into envelopes and write brief messages. Hello from St. Mary's, accented by colorful doodles of sneakers, books, and laptops. He paired each child with an alumni ambassador, older teens who offered guidance and encouragement as they crafted personal messages. Meanwhile, at the Global Gallery station, Olivia and librarian Chen managed a digital slideshow projecting photos and scanned postcards sent by pen pals in London, Nairobi, Mumbai, and Sao Paulo. Each message read aloud by the ambassadors revealed surprising commonalities: favorite foods, playground games, and hopes for the future. A hush fell as 7-year-old Anna heard her new friend in Kenya describe playing football under an acacia tree, painting her face with joy. Mid-morning, a video call lit up a large screen against the courtyard's far wall. On the other side, a group of children from a community center in Dublin waved shyly. Denzel greeted them, Dia Duit, from our courtyard to yours. The Irish children held up a handmade banner reading, Kindness knows no distance. He introduced the St. Mary's scholars in turn, and Maya translated as Olivia shared a poem they'd co-written in response to a prompt. What kindness looks like in your world? As each child took a turn speaking, the global audience clapped, laughed, and cheered across time zones. After the call ended, Denzel gathered everyone under the awning once more. Today, he said, you've built bridges with words, pictures, and shared experiences. These connections will grow, one email, one postcard, one video call at a time. Remember that every friendship you forge helps you stand up for someone you have never met. Madame Alvarez stepped forward with a ceremonial digital ambassador badge for each child, symbolizing their role in the Worldwide Kindness Network. Denzel pinned the first badge onto Maya's lapel. "Wear this proudly," he told her. "You're a voice for this orphanage and a catalyst for global empathy." As afternoon light waned, children and ambassadors continued typing, drawing, and video chatting beneath the lanterns. Volunteers collected envelopes addressed to pen pals around the globe, ready for the afternoon's mailing run. The courtyard echoed with laughter, keyboard clicks, and the rustle of postcards sliding into mailbags. Walking away through the gates, Denzel reflected on how far the journey had come, from tying a single shoelace to weaving an international tapestry of kindness. And as the final postcard sealed the summit of Part 12, every child at St. Mary's, current and alumni, knew that their stories, like their shoes, could carry them anywhere in the world. Winter's first frost dusted the courtyard of St. Mary's Orphanage when Denzel Washington returned to launch the Kindness in Action Community Forum. Beneath the familiar blue awning, long tables were draped in festive upland tartan cloths, signaling the season's close and a new chapter of community engagement. Madame Alvarez met him at the gate, bracing against the crisp air. "The digital journal linked us globally," she said. "Now we gather our local network, neighbors, alumni, mentors, and current scholars for collective problem-solving and celebration." Under the awning, volunteers arranged 4 interactive forum stations: neighborhood needs mapping, collaborative service planning, resource exchange, and reflection and next steps. A large whiteboard bore the forum's theme, from stories to solutions. Denzel stepped forward with a thermos of hot cider. "Today," he began, voice steady in the cold hush, "we translate empathy and connection into concrete action plans for our immediate community. Let's identify pressing challenges, brainstorm solutions, and commit to making them reality." At the Neighborhood Needs Mapping Station, kids and alumni huddled over an oversized map of the surrounding district, marking areas where children lacked winter coats, seniors needed snow shoveling help, and families faced food insecurity. 11-year-old Luis pointed to a cluster of homes on Pine Street. "These houses haven't been plowed," he observed. "Elderly neighbors can't get groceries." Mentor and retired firefighter Captain Lewis scribbled "volunteer shoveling crew" beside Luis's notation. Across the courtyard, the collaborative service planning group assembled. Maya facilitated a session with community partners, representatives from the nearby church, YMCAs, and Boys and Girls Club. Together they drafted a schedule: Saturday soup kitchens at the parish hall, Wednesday coat drives at the Y, and bi-weekly homework clinics at the club. Dominic sketched a flowchart on butcher block paper, detailing volunteer roles, supply sources, and communication channels. Meanwhile, at Resource Exchange, alumni ambassadors, wearing their Leadership Laces badges, stood behind tables piled with donated winter coats, gloves, hats, and blankets. Current scholars passed out tickets to families in need, coordinating pickup times. Librarian Chen oversaw a book swap, ensuring every child could borrow winter-themed stories to read by candlelight in the orphanage's newly refurbished reading nook. As the air filled with lantern-lit chatter, Denzel cycled through the stations, pausing to assist where needed. At one point, he knelt beside a nervous younger child, Phoebe, who trembled as she pinned a note to the needs map. "I need a warm meal after school." Denzel smiled, placing his hand on her shoulder. "We'll make that happen, Phoebe," he assured her. "Your voice is the spark that lights the solution." With mapping, planning, and resource distribution underway, the forum participants gathered back under the awning for reflection and next steps. Denzel invited each table's lead to share their commitments. Luis announced the Snow Angels shoveling crew would start that afternoon. Maya reported on formalized partnerships with 3 organizations. Olivia unveiled a winter reading marathon for all ages, and Dominic confirmed the resource distribution, logistics, and tech support for volunteer coordination. Madame Alvarez then presented each child with a community changemaker pin, an emblem of their leadership in transforming empathy into action. As Denzel pinned one onto Phoebe's coat, she beamed beneath her new mittens. Before closing, Denzel addressed the crowd. "Today you've shown that kindness isn't just a gesture, it's organized compassion. By mapping needs, planning services, sharing resources, and reflecting on outcomes, you become architects of hope. This forum marks a turning point. Our community is now equipped to tackle challenges together, season after season. As twilight deepened, a hush fell over the courtyard. Then, in unison, the children, alumni, mentors, and neighbors raised their hot cider cups in a communal toast. To stories that spark solutions, may our actions warm every heart this winter. Laughter and cheers echoed amidst the lantern glow, sealing the forum's success. Walking away through the iron gates, Denzel reflected on how the orphanage's journey, shoes, stories, scholarships, mentorships, partnerships, global pen pals, and now community forums, had woven a resilient tapestry of kindness. And as snowflakes began to drift, he knew that with each new gathering, St. Mary's would continue turning empathy into enduring impact. The crisp winter days melted into early spring, and St. Mary's Orphanage buzzed anew as Denzel Washington returned to launch the Innovation Incubator and Youth Entrepreneurship Program. Madame Alvarez met him at the gate with a flip chart bearing the incubator's logo, a stylized sneaker sprouting wings. Behind her, banners fluttered above tables labeled Idea Pitch, Prototyping Station, Market Research, and Investor Connect. Denzel smiled broadly. Today, we transform ideas into enterprises, young minds into changemakers. Under the awning, former scholars, now teen alumni ambassadors, gathered alongside current students, each clutching notebooks filled with business concepts. Denzel addressed the group. You've planted gardens, shared stories, built tech, and led community solutions. Now I challenge you to dream up products or services that solve real problems, then pitch them to local investors and mentors. The first station, Idea Pitch, was staffed by Jasmine, now a college sophomore studying marketing. She coached small teams to refine their elevator pitches. 10-year-old Luis presented a prototype for a solar-powered shoe dryer, designed for families without indoor heating. Jasmine guided him. Focus on the benefit, warm, dry feet after a cold night. Luis nodded, repeating his pitch with newfound confidence. At prototyping station, Maya and Dominic unveiled 3D printers donated by a tech sponsor. Current scholars loaded digital designs for custom shoelace charms, symbols of hope and resilience. As printers whirred, Chef Monique offered hot cocoa to fuel creativity. The air smelled of melting chocolate and excitement. A few tables over, market research bustled. Olivia and librarian Chen led teams in surveying local neighbors, gathering feedback on product ideas. Groups roamed the courtyard, clipboard in hand, asking volunteers and pastry donors which shoe accessory they'd buy, or what app feature would help them most. Data scribbled in colorful charts already pointed toward promising concepts. Finally, at Investor Connect, a panel of local entrepreneurs, brought together by Denzel's outreach, waited to hear polished pitches. Among them sat the hardware store owner, the bookstore manager, the suburb's largest employer, and a young venture capitalist from Silicon Beach. Each team had 5 minutes to present, followed by rapid-fire questions. First up was Luis, stepping before the panel in his signature sturdy sneakers. He demonstrated his solar shoe dryer prototype, complete with temperature sensors and a mini fan system. The venture capitalist leaned in, eyes gleaming. I love the sustainability angle, she said. If you can refine the design, I'll provide seed funding for a pilot run. Next, the shoelace charm team presented their 3D printed prototypes, explaining how sales would fund the orphanage's scholarship program. The bookstore manager raised her hand. If you can incorporate literary themes, charms inspired by classic stories, our store will stock them. The children exchanged delighted looks. At midday, Denzel convened all participants under the awning. You've built prototypes and secured partnerships, he said, but remember, entrepreneurship is about perseverance. You'll refine, iterate, and sometimes face setbacks. Lean on your mentors and each other. He gestured toward the incubator stations. Today's pitches are the first step in a journey, from sneaker ideas to real-world solutions. Madame Alvarez then presented innovation badges to each participant, patches depicting a light bulb entwined with a shoelace. As Denzel pinned the badge onto Maya's jacket, he whispered, "Keep innovating." Volunteers and neighbors filtered through the shisarin bins, sampling pin prototypes, offering design feedback, and pledging resources. A local tech firm promised coding internships for promising teams. A logistics company offered pro bono shipping for initial product runs. The incubator hummed with future possibilities. As afternoon melted into gentle evening light, Denzel walked through the courtyard, pausing to tie a young inventor's shoelace, a quiet reminder of the journey's start. He looked back at the incubator's energetic scene. 3D printers, scribbled charts, and eager young faces alight with ambition. Walking away through the gates, Denzel reflected on the evolution of St. Mary's transformation. From tying a single lace to launching a youth innovation hub, each chapter had built upon the last, weaving shoes, stories, scholarships, mentorships, community action, and now entrepreneurship into a tapestry of empowerment. And as he merged into the soft glow of streetlights, he knew the orphanage's legacy would continue to grow, one creative step at a time. Spring sunshine warmed the courtyard of St. Mary's Orphanage as Denzel Washington returned to preside over the youth marketplace and graduation showcase, the culmination of the innovation incubator's first ventures. Under the familiar blue awning, long tables bore handcrafted products, solar shoe dryers, 3D printed shoelace charms, storybook-themed jewelry, tech tutorial kits, and artisanal spice blends. Madame Alvarez greeted Denzel at the gate, her eyes shining with pride. Today, our young entrepreneurs sell their creations and graduate from mentees to market leaders. Denzel stepped into the bustling courtyard, where alumni ambassadors helped current scholars arrange price tags, marketing flyers, and prototype demonstrations. The local business and civic leaders who'd pledged seed funding returned to browse, alongside families, neighbors, and media. A sign overhead read, "From stories to solutions, welcome to the St. Mary's Youth Marketplace." He addressed the group, "You've journeyed from dreaming to doing, testing ideas, refining prototypes, and finding partners. Today, you stand behind these tables, ready to share your ingenuity with the world." He paused, letting applause rise. This marketplace is not just a fair. It's proof that when you tie your ambitions to hard work, your innovations take flight. At Table 1, Luis showcased his improved solar shoe dryer, now equipped with a foldable pedal to generate extra airflow without electricity. His investor partner, the Silicon Beach venture capitalist, helped him demonstrate the device to curious onlookers, highlighting a solar panel's charge levels. As passersby placed orders for early bird units, Luis beamed, answering technical questions and logging deposits. Next, at Table 2, Maya and Dominic managed their 3D printed shoelace charms. They displayed a story series line, charms engraved with fairy tale icons, each packaging including a QR code linking to a child's story. The bookstore manager sampled a charm and said, "I'll stock these in our gift shop." A local craft market organizer offered them a booth at the upcoming spring bazaar. Across the courtyard at Table 3, Olivia and librarian Chen presented book buddy kits, bundled with 2 donated books, reading log sheets and a personalized letter from a St. Mary's scholar. Community seniors browsed the kits, selecting stories to share. A retirement home director placed an order for monthly deliveries. At Table 4, Chef Monique's Culinary Outreach Essentials offered small batch spice jars and recipe cards. She explained how proceeds would fund the after-school cooking classes. A parent volunteer tasted a gumbo seasoning sample and signed up to co-host a summer workshop. Between tables, Denzel circulated, offering words of encouragement. "Don't be afraid to offer a demonstration," he told Luis. "Share your passion," he urged Maya. "Build relationships," he advised Olivia. At each station, the entrepreneurs fielded questions, refined their pitches, and completed their first real sales. At midday, Denzel rang a bell, signaling the graduation showcase. Scholars and ambassadors gathered under the awning once more. Madame Alvarez presented each young entrepreneur with a St. Mary's Innovator Certificate, a tribute to their journey from beneficiaries to business owners. Luis took the microphone. "I never imagined selling my invention. Thank you for believing in me." Maya followed. "Turning a dream into reality feels amazing." Each teen shared a brief reflection as applause erupted. As afternoon waned, the marketplace continued with an added twist. A pop-up mentor match session invited guests to sign up for ongoing coaching, ensuring sustainability. A local college offered internship slots. The hardware store funded Luis's next prototype run. The library committed shelf space to the kits. When the last customer departed and tables cleared, Denzel stood by the gate, watching alumni ambassadors help pack up. Madame Alvarez approached him, handing a small box of shoelace charms. "For your journey," she smiled. Denzel accepted, tying one of the charms to his shoe. He paused, reflecting on the orphanage's transformation. A single act of kindness, a tied shoelace, had bloomed into shoes, stories, scholarships, mentorship, community action, global connections, resilience forums, and now youth-led enterprise. The courtyard, once silent save for soccer balls, now thrummed with commerce, creativity, and hope. As he stepped through the gates, Denzel Washington carried with him the echoes of the marketplace. Laughter, learned lessons, and the stirring realization that when we nurture young dreams with trust and resources, innovation and impact flourish hand in hand, one mindful step at a time.